I've been awake for 16 hours trying to convince a coolant manifold that it doesn't want to kill us all, and I'm losing the argument. The problem with salvage work is that everything you own is held together by desperation and creative reinterpretation of manufacturer specifications. The Peregrine is 43 years old, which makes her ancient by commercial vessel standards, and she spent the last 8 months drifting through empty space while we search for something valuable enough to justify the fuel we've burned looking for it. We've found nothing. My savings are gone. My daughter's 10th birthday is in 6 months, and I promised I'd be there for this one after missing the last 2. I'm elbow deep in the maintenance crawl space behind the engine room, watching coolant pressure readings fluctuate in ways that would make a safety inspector weep when Astra interrupts me. Jack, I'm detecting a large mass at bearing 273 Mark 15. Astra is the ship's artificial intelligence, which sounds impressive until you understand she's running on hardware older than I am, and has the processing power of a particularly ambitious calculator. She handles navigation, life support monitoring, and occasionally offers unsolicited opinions about my life choices. How large? I ask, not looking up from the pressure valve I'm trying to seal with thermal paste and hope. Approximately 400,000 metric tons. I stop working. That's not rubble. That's a ship. Correct. Hull configuration matches colonial transport class. I'm cross-referencing the signature with known vessels. My hands are already moving, reassembling the panel cover with speed that sacrifices thoroughness for urgency. 400,000 tons means something massive, something valuable. In 8 months of searching, we've found exactly 3 pieces of salvageable wreckage. A shattered mining drone, a cargo container full of spoiled medical supplies, and what turned out to be a very expensive piece of garbage that nobody wanted to pay us to haul. I pull myself out of the crawl space and head for the bridge, moving fast through the narrow corridors of the Peregrine. The ship was designed for a crew of 6. We're running with 3 because that's all I could afford after Kate, David and I pooled our last credits to lease her. Every empty bunk is a reminder that we're one disaster away from losing everything. Kate is already at the pilot station when I arrive, her fingers moving across the navigation controls while she studies the holographic display floating in front of her. She's 41, former commercial pilot, and the only reason we haven't crashed into something or run out of fuel yet. David sits at the systems console, his face illuminated by 3 different screens showing data streams I can barely interpret. He's 26, brilliant with computers, and has the social skills of a particularly awkward piece of furniture. Please tell me it's worth something, I say. It's worth everything, David says, not looking away from his screens. Astra, show him the identification. The holographic display shifts, and I see it. A name and registry number that makes my chest tighten. USSF Covenant. Registry CTS-0157. Launched April 14th, 2157. That's impossible, I say. The Covenant disappeared 116 years ago. I'm aware of the chronology, Astra says. However, the hull signature is a 99.7% match. Either we've found the Covenant, or someone has constructed a 400,000-ton replica and abandoned it 73 light-years from Earth. The Covenant was the first major colonial transport, designed to carry 50,000 people to Proxima Centauri in suspended animation. She launched with full fanfare, massive media coverage, and the hopes of a species that had finally figured out how to reach another star. Then, 6 months into the journey, she vanished. No distress signal, just gone. There were investigations, inquiries, conspiracy theories. Some people claimed the ship's faster-than-light drive had malfunctioned and dumped them into an alternate dimension. Others insisted it was sabotage, or alien intervention, or a secret military experiment gone wrong. Eventually, the official verdict was lost with all hands, and humanity moved on to building the next generation of colony ships with better safety features and more redundant communication systems. Finding the Covenant isn't just valuable, it's historic. It's the kind of discovery that makes careers and sets people up for life. How far off course is she? I ask. Approximately 73.2 light-years from her intended trajectory, Astra replies. At her projected speed when she vanished, she should be approaching Proxima Centauri by now. Instead, she appears to have been drifting in the opposite direction for over a century. Kate finally looks up from her console. Jack, before you start calculating salvage percentages, there's something else you need to see. She adjusts the holographic display, zooming in on the Covenant's hull. The image resolves into higher detail, and I understand why her voice has that careful, uncertain quality. The ship's exterior is covered in something. Crystalline structures, geometric and organic at the same time, coating every surface like frost. They refract the distant starlight into patterns that look almost biological, like I'm seeing chromosomes rendered in frozen glass. The formations are thickest near the midsection of the ship, creating massive branching structures that extend outward from the hull like reaching fingers. What am I looking at? I ask. Unknown, David says. The spectral analysis isn't making sense. The material composition reads as organic-synthetic hybrid, but that's not a category that should exist. It's giving off a thermal signature of 37.2 degrees Celsius. Body temperature. Human body temperature. Is it growing? I ask. Unknown, David repeats. We'd need to observe it over time to determine growth rate, but the distribution pattern suggests outward expansion from the hull interior. I stare at the image, trying to make it fit into something I understand. In 16 years of salvage work, I've seen ships destroyed by reactor failures, torn apart by micrometeor strikes, gutted by fires, and left to rot after economic collapse made retrieval unprofitable. I've never seen a ship that looked like it was being consumed by its own crystallized DNA. Astra, any signs of active power generation? Yes, multiple reactor signatures, all operating within normal parameters. The Covenant appears to be fully powered and maintaining standard life support functions. That stops me. A ship that's been drifting for 116 years should be dark and cold. Its reactors long since failed or fuel exhausted. Either the Covenant has power systems that violate every law of physics I understand, or something has been maintaining them. Are there life signs? I ask, already knowing I won't like the answer. Inconclusive, Astra says. The crystalline structures are interfering with bioscanners. I'm detecting thermal patterns consistent with human metabolic signatures, but I cannot provide accurate population counts or locations. Kate swivels her chair to face me. Jack, we need to talk about this before you make any decisions. There's nothing to talk about, I say. This is the find. This is the one that gets us out of debt and lets us stop eating recycled protein paste for every meal. We file a salvage claim, we board her, we assess the situation, and we get paid. If there are people on that ship, Kate starts, then it's a rescue operation, and we're entitled to finder's fees plus hazard compensation, I interrupt. Either way, we're the first ones here, which means we have legal rights under the Salvage Convention of 2092. Astra, file a formal claim with the Interstellar Commerce Authority. Registry number, coordinates, timestamp, and our vessel identification. Claim filed, Astra confirms. However, once the claim propagates on the Ansible relay mesh, other vessels will be alerted to our location. Based on current commercial traffic in this sector, I estimate we have approximately 47 hours before a corporate team already within a few days burn vectors to us. 47 hours. 2 days to board the Covenant, assess what we've found, and establish enough documented salvage work to make our claim legally defensible. After that, the corporations will show up with lawyers, bigger ships, and arguments about why they deserve a share of whatever we've discovered. David, plot a course to the Covenant. Kate, start prep for EVA operations. I want us docked or at least tethered within 3 hours. We don't know what that crystalline material is, David says, finally looking away from his screens. His face has that expression he gets when he's discovered something that bothers him, but he can't articulate why. What if it's hazardous? What if it's infectious? Then we wear suits and follow contamination protocols. We're not walking away from this because we're scared of some weird mineral deposits. I don't think they're mineral deposits, David says quietly. Then what are they? He hesitates, which is unusual. David doesn't usually hesitate when he's discussing technical data. He either knows something or admits he doesn't. This uncertainty means he's seeing something in the numbers that he can't reconcile with his understanding of how the universe works. I think they're alive, he finally says. The bridge goes quiet except for the background hum of the Peregrine's systems. Kate stops what she's doing. I close my eyes and take a breath, reminding myself that David is young and sometimes lets his imagination run faster than his data analysis. Based on what evidence? I ask, keeping my voice level. The thermal signature is too uniform, David says. The distribution pattern follows what looks like a circulatory system. And when I ran a deep spectrum analysis, I detected electromagnetic activity consistent with neural tissue. Not complex cognition, but definitely biological electrical signaling. Whatever that material is, it's not just coating the ship. I think it's integrated with it. That's impossible, Kate says. Nothing can survive in hard vacuum, especially not for over a century. Nothing we know about, David counters. But we also don't know how to build a faster-than-light drive that doesn't require a small star's worth of energy, and the Covenant supposedly had one. What if whatever happened to that ship involved technology we don't understand? What if that crystalline material is some kind of biological component of the drive system? It's a creative theory, and it makes a certain kind of sense if you're willing to ignore several fundamental laws of biology and physics. But it doesn't change the essential reality. We've found a lost colony ship worth billions, and I'm not walking away because of speculation. We'll take precautions, I say. Full environmental suits sealed the entire time. We don't touch anything directly. We document everything, gather samples, and if it looks too dangerous, we pull back and wait for someone with better equipment. But we're boarding that ship, and we're establishing salvage rights before anyone else gets here. Understood. Kate nods slowly. David looks like he wants to argue more but knows it won't change anything. Understood, David says. 3 hours later, we're suited up and ready to cross over to the Covenant. The Peregrine is holding position 50 meters from the larger ship's hull, close enough to use maneuvering jets for the crossing, but far enough back that if something goes catastrophically wrong, we might have time to react. We've matched the Covenant's slow roll, and we're aligned on a non-rotating maintenance spine by engineering so the hull isn't a moving treadmill under us. The Covenant is massive up close, 400,000 tons of metal and composite materials, designed to carry 50,000 people across the vast emptiness between stars. She's shaped like an elongated cylinder, rotating slowly to generate artificial gravity in the residential sections. The bridge and command areas are at one end, the engineering and engine sections at the other, and in between are dozens of decks that housed passengers, supplies, hydroponics, medical facilities, and everything else needed to sustain a population for decades. We're approaching from the engineering end, where the crystalline structures are thinnest. I can see them up close now through my helmet display, geometric patterns that branch and intersect like frozen lightning, growing from the hull in three-dimensional lattices. They're translucent, catching and refracting light into rainbow patterns that shift as we move. There's an exterior maintenance hatch at coordinates 173 Mark 085, Astra says through our suit communicators. It should provide access to the lower engineering deck. Should? Kate asks. The Covenant's schematics are 116 years old. I cannot guarantee perfect accuracy. We jet toward the maintenance hatch, using magnetic grapples to anchor ourselves to the hull once we're close enough. The crystalline material is everywhere, but it's thin enough here that I can still see the metal underneath. I touch it carefully with my gloved hand, watching for any reaction. My suit's contact thermistor pings. It's warm, 37 Celsius. an impossibility for bare hull in hard vacuum. The crystal doesn't move or respond to my touch, but I can see faint patterns of light shifting beneath its surface, like bioluminescence in deep ocean water. Definitely not mineral deposits, I mutter. The maintenance hatch is sealed but not locked. Kate and I work together to manually crank the emergency release, and after several minutes of effort, the outer hatch irises open into a short maintenance lock. A hiss vibrates through the decking, my suit mics picking up structure-borne noise as the vestibule dumps its local pressure. The inner hatch stays sealed. Beyond it, ship sensors show Earth-normal pressurization, another impossibility added to the growing list. We drop through the hatch one at a time, finding ourselves in a narrow access corridor that looks exactly like the schematics promised. The interior lighting is functional, casting everything in a flat, institutional glow. The crystalline growth is here too, thinner than outside but present, delicate branches spreading across the walls and ceiling like vines. Atmosphere composition? I ask. David checks his suit sensors. 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, trace gases. Standard Earth normal mix. Pressure is 1.02 atmospheres. Temperature is 21 degrees Celsius. Perfect conditions for human survival. Perfect conditions maintained for 116 years on a ship that should have been dead within a decade. We move through the access corridor toward the main engineering deck, following the route Astra calculated. The ship is quiet. No alarm klaxons, no emergency announcements, just the distant background noise of functional systems. Everything about this feels wrong. Not dangerous in an obvious way, but wrong in a deep, fundamental sense that makes my instincts scream warnings my rational brain can't quite justify. We reach the main engineering deck, and that's when we see them. People. 17 of them, all dressed in Covenant crew uniforms that look freshly laundered. They're working at various stations around the engineering core, checking readouts, adjusting controls, having quiet conversations. They look up when we enter, expressions registering surprise but not alarm. One of them, a woman in her mid-30s with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, steps forward. "Can I help you?" she asks, her voice calm and professional. "Are you with the relief team? We weren't expecting anyone for another few weeks." I stare at her through my helmet, trying to process what I'm seeing. These people look healthy, alert, normal, like they've been working a regular shift on a functional ship, not drifting through deep space for over a century. "I'm Jack Webb," I say, my voice sounding strange through the suit speaker. "This is Kate Zhao and David Cooper. We're from the salvage vessel Peregrine. We detected your ship and came to investigate." "Salvage vessel?" The woman's expression shifts to confusion. "Why would you think we need salvaging? We're en route to Proxima Centauri. We had a minor drive malfunction, but the engineering team has been working on repairs. Captain Strand is coordinating with navigation to plot a revised course." I exchange glances with Kate through our helmets. She shakes her head slightly, a gesture that says this doesn't make sense, and we need to be very careful about what we say next. "Can you tell me your name?" I ask the woman. "Dr. Reese Monroe," she says. "Propulsion engineering specialist. Is there a problem? You seem concerned about something." "Dr. Monroe, can you tell me what date you think it is?" She frowns at the question. "June 3rd, 2157. We launched 6 weeks ago, is that not correct?" 2157. She thinks it's been 6 weeks since the Covenant left Earth. She has no concept that 116 years have passed, that everyone she knew before boarding this ship is dead, that she's been classified as lost with all hands for longer than I've been alive. "Dr. Monroe," I say carefully, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. The current year is 2273. Your ship has been missing for 116 years. She stares at me, and then she laughs. Not hysterical laughter, just genuine amusement at what she clearly thinks is a bizarre joke. "That's ridiculous," she says. "I had breakfast this morning. I spoke with my sister via Ansible Link 2 days ago. I'm not 146 years old, and neither is anyone else on this ship. An Ansible is a communication system that uses quantum entanglement to send messages across vast distances, effectively instantaneous. They were experimental in 2157, expensive and unreliable. The Covenant had one as part of her state-of-the-art equipment package. When did you last receive a message through the Ansible? I ask. 4 weeks ago, Dr. Monroe says. After we entered the anomaly and had to shut down the main drive. Communication has been spotty since then, but that's expected during drive recalibration. Command said we should have full connection restored once we clear the interference zone. David steps forward, pulling out a handheld scanner. Dr. Monroe, I'd like to run a quick biometric scan if you don't mind, just to check for any exposure to hazardous materials after your drive malfunction. She shrugs. Sure, if you think it's necessary. David points the scanner at her, and I watch his expression change as the data comes through. The handheld uses a near-field biosignal coupler designed to read through suits, great for diagnostics, and in hindsight a perfect bridge for anything broadcasting from her nervous system. He turns the display so I can see it, and my stomach drops. According to the scanner, Dr. Reese Monroe is biologically 36 years old. Her cellular aging markers are consistent with someone in their mid-30s. But there are anomalies, foreign proteins in her bloodstream, neural tissue showing unusual electrical activity, and something the scanner can't quite identify that's integrated into her nervous system at the molecular level. And when I look closely at her hands, I notice something I missed before. Her fingernails are slightly translucent, and beneath them I can see faint threads of light, like fiber optic cables running beneath the nail bed. They pulse very gently, in rhythm with her heartbeat. Dr. Monroe, I say slowly, have you noticed any physical changes since you encountered the anomaly? Anything unusual? She looks down at her hands, examining them with mild curiosity. Huh, she says. That's new. She holds up her hands, turning them to catch the light. The luminous threads beneath her nails glow faintly brighter. I hadn't noticed that before. Is it concerning? No fear, no alarm, just curiosity, like she's discovered an interesting but ultimately trivial detail. When you say you encountered an anomaly, I ask, what exactly did you encounter? We don't know, Dr. Monroe says. Navigation detected a spatial distortion 3 weeks into the journey. Captain Strand ordered a course correction, but we passed through the edge of it before we could fully maneuver clear. The faster-than-light drive shut down automatically as a safety measure. We've been running diagnostics and repairs ever since. And where are the other passengers? I ask. The Covenant launched with 50,000 people. I'm only seeing 17 crew members in this section. Dr. Monroe looks at me like I've asked why water is wet. They're in their sections, of course, in suspended animation, waiting for arrival at Proxima Centauri. We're the engineering rotation that was awake for the initial journey phase. The other crew rotations are still in suspension along with the colonists. Standard procedure. Standard procedure for a 6-week journey that has somehow stretched across 116 years without anyone noticing. I turn to Kate and David, speaking on a private channel. Thoughts? They believe what they're saying, Kate says. They're not delusional or trying to deceive us. Whatever happened to this ship, it's affecting their perception of time. Or their memory, David adds. That foreign material in Dr. Monroe's nervous system. What if it's altering how her brain processes chronological information? What if all these people have experienced 6 weeks subjectively, while the ship has been drifting for over a century objectively? That would require technology we don't have, I say. That would require the ability to manipulate consciousness itself. We also don't have crystalline structures that grow on spaceship hulls and maintain perfect thermal signatures in hard vacuum, David counters. Whatever happened here, it's beyond our current understanding of physics and biology. He's right, and that's what terrifies me. Dr. Monroe, I say, switching back to the common channel, is Captain Strand on the bridge? Should be, she says. Along with the senior navigation and operations staff, they've been coordinating the repair schedule. Do you want me to contact them for you? Yes, please. Tell them we need to speak with them about the current situation. She walks over to a wall-mounted communication panel and presses a button. Bridge, this is engineering. We have visitors from a vessel called the Peregrine. They're requesting to speak with Captain Strand. There's a pause. Then a voice responds. Understood, engineering. Send them up. Captain will meet with them in conference room 2. Dr. Monroe turns back to us. Conference room 2 is on deck 9, near the bridge. Just take the central access lift. It should be fully operational. Thank you, I say. As we leave the engineering deck, heading towards the lift, I keep thinking about Dr. Monroe's hands, about those luminous threads beneath her fingernails, about the way she looked at them with curiosity instead of horror, as if transformation was just another interesting data point in a routine day. We enter the lift, and I tell it to take us to deck 9. As we ascend through the ship, I can see more of the crystalline structures through the transparent sections of the lift shaft. They're thicker here, growing in massive branching patterns that spread across multiple decks. And in the center of those patterns, I can see shapes that might be human forms, suspended in translucent pods of the same crystalline material. Jack, Kate says quietly, I think we need to consider the possibility that we're in over our heads. We're absolutely in over our heads, I agree. But we're also the only people here who know that something is catastrophically wrong with this ship. If we leave now, the next team that arrives might not be prepared for what they find. Or worse, they might be prepared. And they might decide that 50,000 people affected by an unknown phenomenon are a liability better handled with explosives and a safe distance. You think someone would destroy the ship? David asks. I think someone would make the calculation that containing an unknown threat is more important than saving people who might not be salvageable, I say. We have 46 hours before the corporate teams arrive. In that time, we need to figure out what happened to the Covenant, what's happening to its passengers, and whether there's any way to stop it. The lift reaches deck 9, and the doors open onto a corridor that's noticeably different from the engineering sections. This is officer territory. Better lighting, wider corridors, actual decorations on the walls. Photographs of Earth, star charts, inspirational quotes about human exploration and the courage to reach for distant worlds. Conference room 2 is clearly marked, and the door is open. Inside, a woman in a captain's uniform is waiting for us. She's in her late 40s, with grey streaked hair and the kind of posture that speaks to decades of military discipline. She stands as we enter. Captain Olivia Strand, she says. Welcome aboard the Covenant. I understand you have some questions about our current status. I take a breath, trying to figure out how to explain to a woman who thinks she's 6 weeks into a journey that she's actually been missing for over a century, and that her ship has been transformed into something that violates every law of nature I understand. Captain Strand, I begin. I'm afraid we have a lot to discuss, and almost none of it is good news. Captain Strand listens to everything I tell her with the kind of patience that makes me think she's humoring someone she believes is experiencing a psychological break. When I finish explaining that the year is 2273 and her ship has been missing for over a century, she stands and walks to the conference room's viewport. That's an interesting theory, Mr. Webb, she says, looking out at the stars. But I can tell you definitively that it's incorrect. I spoke with Earth Command 18 days ago. I received updated navigation data from the Proxima Advance team 23 days ago. And just this morning, I approved the duty rotation schedule that will bring the next crew shift out of suspension in 2 weeks. Captain, I can show you our ship's logs, I say. I can show you astronomical data that proves our location is inconsistent with a 6-week journey from Earth. I can show you. You can show me data from your vessel's computers, she interrupts, still looking at the stars, which I have no way to verify. For all I know, You're pirates running an elaborate con to gain access to a colonial transport, or you're experiencing equipment malfunctions that have corrupted your navigational databases. Either scenario is more plausible than the entire crew of the Covenant somehow losing track of 116 years. She turns back to face me. However, I'm not dismissing your concerns entirely. You're clearly sincere, and the fact that you're wearing full environmental suits suggests you believe there's a contamination risk. Dr. Monroe mentioned you scanned her and found anomalies. Her nervous system has been altered at the molecular level, David says. There's foreign material integrated into her neural tissue. We think it's connected to the crystalline structures coating your hull. The what? Captain Strand's expression shifts to genuine confusion. Your hull is covered in crystalline growth, Kate says. Geometric structures that are giving off thermal and electrical signatures consistent with living tissue. You haven't noticed. Our hull integrity sensors show normal readings across all sections, Captain Strand says slowly. If there were external growths, we'd have detected them. The Covenant's monitoring systems are some of the most sophisticated ever built. Unless the monitoring systems have been compromised, I say. Unless whatever is affecting this ship has integrated so deeply that your instruments can't distinguish between the ship's original structure and the growth. Captain Strand is quiet for a moment, and I can see her working through the logic. She's military trained, probably spent decades learning to assess threat scenarios and make decisions with incomplete information. She doesn't believe what I'm telling her, but she's willing to consider the possibility that something is wrong, even if my explanation is incorrect. What do you propose? She asks. Let us investigate, I say. Give us access to your ship's systems, your medical records, your communication logs. Let us move through the different sections and document what we find. If we're wrong, you lose nothing except a few hours of your time. If we're right, you need to know what's happened to your ship and your crew. And if I refuse, then we leave, and in approximately 45 hours, corporate salvage teams will arrive. They'll board this ship with far less concern for your well-being than we have. And if they determine that the Covenant represents a contamination risk or an unknown threat, they'll make decisions based on profit margins and liability concerns, not on saving 50,000 lives. Captain Strand's jaw tightens. That sounds like a threat. It's a statement of fact, I say. We found you. We filed a legal salvage claim. That claim is already propagating through the Interstellar Commerce Authority's databases, which means every ship within a week's travel time now knows there's a valuable derelict at these coordinates. We can't stop them from coming. We can only try to understand what's happened here before they arrive. She walks back to the conference table and sits down heavily. I don't believe your timeline, she says. But I do believe that something unusual is happening. The Ansible has been unreliable since we encountered the anomaly. Several crew members have reported strange dreams. And there have been minor equipment irregularities that don't match any diagnostic patterns I've seen before. She looks up at me. You can investigate. I'll grant you temporary access to the ship's systems and authorize passage through the crew sections. But I'm assigning one of my officers to accompany you. And if I determine that you're sabotaging my ship or threatening my passengers, I will have you restrained and confined. Fair enough, I say. We'll need access to your mid-deck residential sections first. That's where we're detecting the highest concentration of the crystalline structures. Residential sections are currently in minimal activity mode, Captain Strand says. Most passengers are in suspended animation. Only essential crew rotations are awake, and they're primarily stationed in engineering, navigation, and life support. How many crew members are currently active? Kate asks. Captain Strand checks a tablet on the conference table. 47 across all sections. Standard operational rotation for a ship of this size during transit phase. 47 people awake, 17 in engineering. That leaves 30 distributed through the rest of the ship. Nowhere near enough to monitor or maintain a vessel carrying 50,000 passengers. But if everyone believes the journey has only been 6 weeks, there's no reason to think additional crew are needed. We'd like to start with mid-deck 7, I say. Our scans showed unusual readings from that section. Captain Strand nods and taps her tablet. I'm authorizing your access now. Lieutenant Gibson will meet you at the Deck 7 access corridor. He's been overseeing residential section monitoring during this rotation. We leave the conference room and make our way to the mid-deck levels, following the ship's internal directory. The Covenant is massive enough that it takes us nearly 15 minutes just to reach the transition point between the command levels and the residential decks. As we descend, I notice the crystalline structures becoming more prevalent. What were thin veins in the engineering section have become thick, branching networks that spread across entire bulkheads. David stops at one of the larger formations, scanning it with his handheld unit. The electrical activity is increasing, he says. The deeper we go into the ship, the stronger the neural pattern signatures become. It's like we're moving towards something with greater cognitive function. You're saying the ship is thinking, Kate says flatly. I'm saying something connected to the ship is thinking, David corrects. And the thought patterns are becoming more complex and coordinated as we approach the mid-decks. We reach Deck 7's access corridor and find a young officer waiting for us. Lieutenant Michael Gibson, according to his uniform designation. He's maybe 25, with the kind of crisp military bearing that suggests recent academy graduation. He looks at our environmental suits with obvious curiosity. Captain Strand said you're investigating a potential contamination issue, he says. I'm not aware of any environmental hazards in the residential sections. All atmospheric readings have been normal. We're being cautious, I say. We detected some unusual readings from outside the ship and want to make sure they're not affecting the interior environment. Understood. I'll escort you through Deck 7. Most of this section is dormant right now. Passengers are in their suspension pods, and automated systems are handling life support monitoring. I do a physical walkthrough every 3 days to check for maintenance issues. When was your last walkthrough? I ask. Yesterday morning, Lieutenant Gibson says. Everything was normal. The passengers in this section are all healthy and stable according to their pod readouts. He leads us through the access hatch into Deck 7 proper, and immediately I can see that something is wrong. The residential section has been transformed. What should be a standard corridor with suspension pod bays on either side has become something else entirely. The walls are covered in organic structures that look like they've been grown rather than built. Smooth, curved surfaces that blend seamlessly with the original ship architecture. The crystalline material is everywhere, forming patterns that resemble neural networks or root systems, connecting the pods in a vast, interconnected web. And the pods themselves are no longer the standard metal and plastic suspension units I've seen in 100 different ship designs. They've been modified, integrated with the crystalline growth, transformed into translucent chambers that glow with soft internal light. Through the clear surfaces, I can see people inside, but they're not in suspended animation. They're awake, moving, changed. Lieutenant Gibson, I say carefully, does this look normal to you? He glances around the corridor with the expression of someone confirming what they already know. Yes, of course. This is standard residential section configuration. Is there a problem? I look at Kate, and she shakes her head slightly. Whatever is affecting the crew's perception, Lieutenant Gibson is experiencing it too. He can't see the transformation that's happened to this deck, or his brain is interpreting it as normal ship architecture. Lieutenant, I need you to wait here for a moment, I say. We're going to move ahead and take some readings. I'll signal you if we need assistance. He looks uncertain, but nods. I'll be right here if you need me. We move deeper into Deck 7, and the transformation becomes more pronounced with each meter. The organic structures have completely overtaken some sections, creating chambers and passageways that have nothing to do with the original ship design. And through the translucent walls I can see more people. Dozens, then hundreds, then what must be thousands of them. They're not in pods anymore. They're integrated into the structure itself, standing or floating in amniotic chambers that pulse with bioluminescent light. and they've changed. Additional limbs, I count 4, sometimes 6 manipulator arms extending from torsos that have elongated to accommodate the extra appendages. Their skin has become translucent, revealing the luminous network of what might be nerves or blood vessels beneath. Their eyes have developed additional structures, extra lenses or faceted surfaces that catch and reflect the ambient light in insectoid patterns. And they're building something. The organic structures aren't random. They're being deliberately shaped, grown, directed by the transformed passengers working in coordinated groups. They move in perfect synchronization, their multiple hands shaping the living material of the walls into new forms and patterns. Jesus, Kate whispers. One of the transformed passengers notices us, then another, then a dozen of them turn toward us simultaneously. They approach the transparent wall of their chamber, and I can see their mouths moving, speaking the same words at the same moment. The wall opens, flowing aside like a membrane, and they step through into the corridor. Up close, the transformation is even more disturbing. Their additional limbs move with fluid grace, and the bioluminescence beneath their skin pulses in rhythmic patterns that seem to synchronize between individuals. "Welcome," they say together, their voices overlapping perfectly. "You're new. You haven't adapted yet. It's all right. The ship will teach you as it taught us." "Who are you?" I ask, though the question feels absurd. "We were passengers," they say. "We were scientists, engineers, teachers, farmers. We were 2,117 individuals. Now we're becoming something better." One of them steps forward. A man whose body proportions suggest he was once roughly my height but has been elongated, his spine stretched to accommodate the additional limbs and altered internal structure. His eyes have multiple pupils, like a cluster of camera lenses all focused on me at once. "I'm Julian Carver," he says, and his voice is singular now, not synchronized with the others. Or I was Julian Carver. I'm still learning how much of me is still separate. It's harder to tell each day. "How long have you been like this?" I ask. 347 days since launch," Julian says. "Or perhaps longer. Time feels different now. We experience moments sequentially, but we also remember them simultaneously. The ship helps us understand how to perceive multiple temporal states at once." 347 days, nearly a year, subjectively. Far longer than Captain Strand's 6 weeks, but still nowhere close to 116 years. "What happened to you?" Kate asks. "The anomaly," Julian says, and the other transformed passengers echo him. "The anomaly." Their voices layer and harmonize, creating something that sounds like a chorus. "We passed through something that wasn't space as we understood it. The ship's systems were damaged, the faster-than-light drive shut down, and then the transformation began. We felt it first in our fingers," the chorus continues. "A tingling, a warmth. Then we saw the light beneath our skin. Then the changes accelerated. Additional limbs budding from nerve clusters, enhanced sensory organs developing from existing structures. Our consciousnesses beginning to touch each other, overlap, merge. We were frightened at first," Julian says alone. "Some of us tried to stop it, isolated ourselves, requested medical intervention. But the ship's medical systems couldn't identify any pathology. According to every diagnostic, we were becoming healthier, stronger, more capable." "And were you?" David asks, his voice tight. "Yes," Julian says simply. "Every change made us better suited for the journey. We can tolerate wider environmental variations. We require less nutrition. We can coordinate complex tasks through direct neural networking. We're becoming the ideal crew for a generation ship." "Whether you wanted to or not," I say. "Want is a complicated concept," Julian replies. "We wanted to survive. We wanted to reach Proxima Centauri. The ship is fulfilling those wants by changing us into a form that can achieve them. Is that not what we asked for when we boarded?" His additional arms gesture toward the organic structures growing from the walls. "We're building the next version of the ship, growing it from our own biology, integrated with the vessel's systems. When we reach our destination, we'll be perfectly adapted to colonize the new world. No need for terraforming. No need to change the environment to suit us. We'll change ourselves to suit the environment. You said the ship is teaching you, I say. What do you mean by that? The ship has awareness, Julian says. Not consciousness as we understood it before, but something emergent from all of us working together. It guides the transformation. It shows us what we need to become. We can feel it in the crystalline structures, in the organic networks connecting us. It loves us. It wants us to be more than we were. The word love coming from his transformed mouth is deeply wrong. This isn't love. This is systematic biological invasion masquerading as optimization. Can you stop it? I ask. The transformation? If you wanted to stay as you are now, could you prevent further changes? Why would we want to? Julian asks, and his multiple eyes focus on me with what might be confusion or pity. This is growth. This is evolution. Would you ask a child to stop becoming an adult? Would you ask a seed to refuse to become a tree? A child chooses to grow up, Kate says. A seed doesn't have consciousness that gets erased by transformation. We're not being erased, Julian says. And for the first time, there's something like emotion in his voice. Defensive, almost hurt. We remember everything we were. We still have our personalities, our memories, our relationships. We're just experiencing them differently now, sharing them with each other. Is that so terrible? To never be alone again, to always understand and be understood. Before I can answer, David makes a sound, half gasp, half groan. He staggers, one hand going to his helmet as if he wants to tear it off. Kate and I grab him, keeping him upright. David, what's wrong? I ask. Can hear them, he says, his words slurring. Can hear all of them, not voices, thoughts, feelings. They're so loud. How do they stand it being so loud? I look at his face through the helmet and feel my chest constrict. His eyes have changed. The whites are no longer white. They're faintly luminous, glowing with the same soft light I saw in Dr. Monroe's fingernails. And in his temples I can see shapes moving beneath the skin, thread-like structures. When did this start? I demand. Engineering deck, David says, fighting to keep his words clear. When I scanned Dr. Monroe with the near-field coupler. Felt something connect. Thought it was just feedback from the scanner. But it didn't stop. It's getting stronger. The deeper we go into the ship, the stronger it gets. Julian Carver steps closer, his multiple eyes examining David with interest. He's adapting quickly. The ship recognizes potential in him. Strong neural plasticity. Excellent systems comprehension. He'll make a valuable addition to our network. He's not joining anything, I say, pulling David back. He's leaving with us. You can't stop it, Julian says, not threatening, just stating fact. Once the transformation begins, it progresses. Fighting it only causes pain. Acceptance brings integration. Integration brings clarity. Clarity brings joy. He gestures back toward the organic structures, where thousands of transformed passengers work in perfect coordination. We were alone before, separate, limited. Now we're together. We can share thoughts, distribute problems across multiple minds, experience consensus without conflict. The loneliness of individual consciousness is ending. The ship is saving us from ourselves. By turning you into something that isn't human anymore, Kate says. By turning us into the next version of human, Julian corrects. The version that can survive the void between stars. The version that can colonize worlds too hostile for baseline biology. The version that will outlive Earth's sun and reach the far edge of the galaxy. And what about the people who don't want that, I ask? What about the passengers who want to stay human? There are no passengers, Julian says. There is only crew. Everyone aboard is part of the journey now. Everyone is becoming what they need to become. The people near the engines still look normal, I point out. Dr. Monroe, the engineering staff. They haven't transformed like you. They're farther from the core, Julian explains. The transformation radiates outward from the bridge where it began. The closer you are to the center, the faster you adapt. Those in engineering will change eventually, but more slowly. They're needed in their current form to maintain the older systems while we grow the new ones. And what's at the core? I ask. What's at the bridge? Julian's multiple arms spread wide in a gesture that might be reverence. The first ones. The captain and senior staff. They're closest to the ship's awareness. They've achieved the deepest integration. They experience all of us simultaneously, coordinate the entire transformation. They've transcended individual perspective entirely. They're still alive? Kate asks. Alive is an insufficient term, Julian says. They exist in a state beyond what you'd recognize as life or consciousness. They are the bridge between what we were and what we're becoming. If you want to understand what's happened to the Covenant, you need to go there. You need to see them. I look at David, who's now leaning heavily against the wall, his breathing rapid and shallow through the suit's respirator. His eyes are glowing brighter, and I can see the thread-like structures in his temples spreading, creating visible networks across his skull beneath the skin. We need to get him back to the Peregrine, I say. Get him into medical quarantine before this progresses further. It's too late for that, Julian says. The maintenance lock you used to enter is sealed now. The ship has grown over it. The transformation extends to the vessel itself, not just the crew. The Covenant knows you're here, and it wants to keep you safe. Going outside would expose you to hard vacuum. Staying inside allows the ship to help you adapt. You're saying we're trapped, Kate says. You're saying the ship is holding us prisoner, I add. The ship doesn't understand concepts like imprisonment, Julian replies. It only understands optimization. You came here seeking value, and the greatest value you can receive is integration. Everything you need is provided. Atmosphere, nutrition, community. Why would you need to leave? I switch to a private channel with Kate. We need to verify what he's saying about the airlock. Already on it, she says. Astra, can you hear us? Static. Then Astra's voice, weak and interrupted. Receiving signal degradation. Crystalline structures interfering with communications. Astra, status on our entry point? Kate asks. Monitoring external sensors. Growth has accelerated. Airlock is sealed. Estimate minimum 12 hours to cut through if you had proper equipment, which you don't. The signal cuts out entirely. She's right, Kate says to me. We're stuck here. I force myself to think through the fear trying to grip my throat. We came here knowing there were risks, but I didn't anticipate the ship itself becoming an active participant in trapping us. We have two options. We can try to fortify our position here on Deck 7 and wait for help to arrive in 44 hours, hoping that David's transformation doesn't progress beyond reversibility in that time. Or we can push forward toward the bridge, toward whatever Julian calls the core, and try to understand this phenomenon enough to stop it. Waiting means gambling that David stays David long enough for rescue. Pushing forward means voluntarily moving deeper into the transformation zone, where Kate and I will be at greater risk of infection. But it also might give us the information needed to actually help these people, instead of just documenting their transformation. Jack, David says, his voice steadier now but different. There's a quality to it that sounds like he's speaking in harmony with something I can't hear. I can feel the ship's systems. It's not trying to hurt us. It genuinely believes it's helping. And I can feel the people connected to it. Thousands of them. They're not suffering. They're experiencing something I don't have words for. Something that might be beautiful if it weren't so utterly terrifying. Can you hold yourself together? I ask him. Can you stay David long enough to reach the bridge? I think so, he says. But I'm not sure how much of me will be left by the time we get there. The deeper we go, the harder it is to remember which thoughts are mine and which ones are coming from the network. I make the decision. We're going to the bridge. We're going to find out what's at the core of this ship and we're going to figure out if there's any way to stop the transformation before corporate teams arrive and make decisions we can't control. You'll need a guide, Julian says. The residential decks are extensive, and the architecture has changed. You could wander for days without finding the right passages. You're offering to help us, I ask. I'm offering to show you the truth, Julian replies. The ship wants you to understand. It wants you to choose integration willingly instead of fighting it. And the best way to help you choose is to let you see what we've become. I don't trust him, but I don't have better options. Lead the way. Julian nods and turns, his multiple limbs moving in coordinated grace. The other transformed passengers part, creating a corridor through their mass. As we follow Julian deeper into Deck 7, I notice the organic structures becoming more elaborate, chambers connected by living tunnels, spaces that seem to serve functions I can't identify. Through the translucent walls, I see more transformed passengers, some barely recognizable as human anymore. How many decks are between us and the bridge? Kate asks. 10, Julian says, but the decks don't function the way they did before. The ship has reorganized interior space. What were separate levels have become interconnected zones. Near the core, physical geography becomes flexible. What does that mean? I ask. You'll understand when you see it, Julian says. Language isn't sufficient to describe what happens when consciousness and architecture merge. We pass through another membrane door into a chamber that seems to serve as a hub. Dozens of passages branch off in directions that don't align with the ship's original floor plan. The crystalline structures here are massive, forming columns and arches, and everywhere, transformed passengers work on projects I can't comprehend. Growing new structures, tending to organic systems, interfacing directly with the ship's neural networks by pressing their palms against the crystalline surfaces. David stops, staring at one of the crystalline columns. I can hear what they're thinking, he says. Not words, concepts. They're designing a new oxygen generation system, one that's partially photosynthetic. They're trying to make the ship self-sustaining even if mechanical life support fails. How do you know that? I ask. I can see it, he says, touching his helmet where his temple would be. The information is just available, like remembering something I learned years ago. Except I never learned it. The network knows it, and the network is teaching me. Julian watches David with what might be approval. He's adapting beautifully, strong integration potential. The ship chose well when it began his transformation. The ship didn't choose anything, I say. David's exposure was an accident. There are no accidents, Julian says. Only patterns we don't yet understand. He was meant to connect. Just as you were meant to find the Covenant. Just as all of us were meant to become what we're becoming. That's teleological thinking, Kate says. You're imposing purpose on random events. Is it random that we encountered the anomaly? Julian asks. Is it random that the transformation optimizes us for deep space survival? Is it random that you arrived exactly when you could witness and document our evolution? I believed in randomness when I was alone in my own skull. Now I can see the patterns that connect everything. Causality isn't linear. Effect anticipates cause. The future shapes the past. We're not becoming something new. We're remembering what we were always going to be. The words make my head hurt. This is what happens when transformation affects the parts of the brain that handle time and causality. Julian isn't just physically changed. His entire framework for understanding reality has been altered. We move through passage after passage, descending or ascending. It becomes hard to tell which direction we're moving because the ship's artificial gravity seems inconsistent here. Some corridors have normal gravity. Others have reduced gravity that lets the transformed passengers float like they're swimming through air. A few sections have no gravity at all, and I watch passengers anchor themselves to the walls with adhesive hands I didn't notice they'd developed. The transformation gradient becomes more obvious as we travel. In the sections we first entered, The passengers still had recognizable human forms with additions and enhancements. Here, deeper into the mid-deck zones, the baseline human architecture is becoming optional. I see a passenger whose lower body has been replaced with something like a root structure that connects directly into the floor. Another whose arms have multiplied and differentiated into specialized appendages, some for manipulation, some that look designed for interfacing with technology, some whose function I can't identify. And through it all, David is changing. The luminescence in his eyes grows brighter. The structures beneath his skin become more pronounced. He starts responding to questions before I finish asking them, like he's hearing my intention rather than waiting for my words. "David," I say, "talk to me. Tell me what you're experiencing." "Everything," he says. "I can feel the ship's hull temperature in Sector 94. I know that the atmospheric processor in Deck 3 needs maintenance. I can sense 2,643 individual minds, all thinking different thoughts simultaneously, and somehow I can track all of them without losing myself. Except, I think I am losing myself. Or maybe I'm finding a bigger self. It's hard to tell the difference." "You're still David," I say firmly. "David Cooper, 26 years old, systems analyst. You grew up on Mars. Your favorite food is your mother's pepper soup. You have a sister named Ada who's studying xenobiology on Titan. Stay focused on those facts. Those are your anchors." "I remember all of that," David says. "But I also remember being Julian Carver. And I remember being a woman named Esperanza Ruiz who worked in hydroponics. And I remember being a child named Tom who was 8 when we launched and who's been in suspension this whole time. But I can feel him anyway, dreaming in his pod. How can I remember being all of these people? How can I hold all of these memories without going insane?" "You're not going insane," Julian says. "You're expanding. The human brain is capable of far more than individual consciousness allows. We only use it for one perspective at a time because we're isolated in single bodies. Connected, we can process hundreds of perspectives simultaneously. It's not madness, it's transcendence." "It's violation," Kate says. "David didn't consent to having his consciousness merged with thousands of strangers." "Consent is a concept created by isolated individuals protecting their boundaries," Julian says. "When boundaries dissolve, consent becomes meaningless. Would you ask your left hand for permission to share sensory data with your right hand?" "My hands don't have separate consciousness," Kate counters. "Neither do we anymore," Julian says. "That's the point." We reach what Julian describes as the last mid-deck zone before entering the core region. Here, the transformation has progressed to a degree that makes me question whether these beings can still be called human in any meaningful sense. The passengers exist in massive amniotic chambers, their bodies vestigial, just enough torso and head to support brain structures that have grown far beyond human scale. Their nervous systems extend outside their bodies like luminous roots, connecting to neighboring chambers in vast networks. They don't speak. They communicate through patterns of bioluminescent pulses that ripple across their extended neural tissue. David watches them, transfixed. "They're beautiful," he whispers. "They're victims," I say. "They're both," he replies. "Just like I'm becoming." Julian stops at a membrane door that's larger and more elaborate than the others we've passed through. Beyond it, I can see a different kind of light. Not the soft bioluminescence of the mid-decks, but something brighter and more complex, shifting through spectrums that seem to include colors I don't have names for. "This is the threshold," Julian says. "Beyond this point, the transformation accelerates. The ship's consciousness is strongest near the bridge. If you continue, you'll be changed more rapidly than David has been. Hours instead of days. Maybe minutes." "How much of himself will he lose?" I ask. "All of it. And none of it. His memories, his personality, his sense of self, all of that will remain. But it will be distributed across the network, shared with everyone else, no longer exclusive to the architecture of his individual brain." He'll be David, and he'll be all of us, and the distinction will stop mattering. That's death, Kate says. It's translation, Julian corrects, from singular to plural, from isolated to connected, from limited to limitless. I look at David. His entire skull is now visibly networked with the thread-like structures, creating patterns that glow beneath his skin like circuit boards. His eyes are purely luminous, no longer showing any white or iris. He's already more transformed than not. David, I say, you have to decide. We can stop here. We can try to fortify this position and wait for rescue. Or we can go through that door and try to reach the bridge, but you need to understand, if we continue, you might not come back from this. The person you are right now might be gone. He's quiet for a long moment, and when he speaks, his voice is layered, his own voice overlaid with harmonics from other minds connected through the network. Tell Ada I love her, he says. Tell her that whatever I become, that part was always real. Tell her I'm sorry I won't be at her graduation. David, no, Jack, we came here to understand, he says, interrupting. To document, to find out what happened to the Covenant so that when the corporate teams arrive, someone can give them accurate information instead of letting them make decisions based on ignorance. I'm the only one who can interface with the ship's systems now. I'm the only one who can retrieve data from the core. If I don't go through that door, you'll have nothing to show the corporations except horror. You won't be able to tell them how to help these people, or whether they even want to be helped. He's right, and I hate that he's right. I'm scared, he says, and this time his voice is just his own. I'm absolutely terrified, but I'm also curious. I've spent my whole life trying to understand systems, and this is the most complex system I've ever encountered. I want to see it. I want to know how it works, even if understanding costs me everything. Kate puts a hand on my shoulder. It's his choice, she says quietly. I nod, unable to speak past the tightness in my throat. All right, I say finally. We go through, we reach the bridge, we find out what's at the core, and then we figure out how to make sure that what happened here doesn't happen to anyone else without their knowledge. Julian places multiple hands on the membrane door, and it flows open like water, revealing the passage beyond. The light from inside washes over us, and even through my helmet I can feel it. A warmth that has nothing to do with temperature. A presence that presses against my consciousness like an invitation and a command. We step through the threshold, and I know with absolute certainty that nothing will be the same after this. Not for David. Not for any of us. The door closes behind us, and ahead, somewhere in the transformed heart of the Covenant, the bridge is waiting. The passage beyond the threshold doesn't follow the ship's original architecture. Walls curve at angles that make my spatial reasoning falter. What should be corridors become chambers. What should be vertical becomes horizontal without any transition I can identify. The crystalline structures here are so dense, they've replaced most of the original ship materials, creating an environment that's more grown than built. And the people, if I can still call them people, have transformed beyond anything I saw in the mid-decks. We're on what Julian identifies as Deck 17, 3 levels below the bridge, though levels seems like an inadequate concept for how space functions here. The chamber we enter is vast, extending upward and outward in dimensions that don't match the Covenant's exterior proportions. The ceiling, if it is a ceiling, disappears into darkness, punctuated by bioluminescent networks that pulse like artificial constellations. Suspended throughout the chamber are hundreds of translucent sacs, each containing what was once a human being. Their bodies are vestigial now, just enough torso to house organs, just enough skull to contain what remains of a face. But their brains have grown enormous, distended far beyond normal human scale, and their nervous systems have been externalized. Luminous neural tissue extends from each body like roots from a plant, spreading outward to connect with neighboring sacs in an intricate three-dimensional web. They're alive. I can see movement within the sacs, slow shifts of position, the rhythmic expansion and contraction that suggests breathing. But they're not alive in any way I understand life. These were the first mid-deck passengers to fully integrate, Julian says. His voice is quiet, almost reverent. They've been in this state for subjective decades. Some of them remember being human, but the memory is distant, like trying to recall being an infant. David approaches one of the sacks, moving with a strange floating quality, even though we're in normal gravity. His transformation has accelerated since we passed through the threshold. The structures beneath his skin now form complete networks across his entire body, visible through his environmental suit. His hands have begun to develop adhesive properties. I watch him place a palm against the transparent surface of the sack, and his skin seems to merge slightly with the material before he pulls away. "Can they communicate?" he asks. "Yes," Julian says, "but not through language. Watch." He places multiple hands against the nearest sack, and immediately patterns of light begin to ripple across the neural tissue within. Complex, rhythmic flashes that spread through the web connecting dozens of sacks. The patterns propagate like waves across water, building into elaborate sequences that must encode information in ways my brain can't process. David tilts his head, watching the patterns. They're saying they remember being separate. They remember the journey beginning, but time has become, he struggles for words, non-linear. They experience all moments simultaneously, past, present, future overlapping. They say it's been 9,000 years since launch, and also 7 seconds. Both are equally true from their perspective. "That's impossible," Kate says, but her voice lacks conviction. "We've moved far past the boundary of possible." "Not impossible," David says, touching his helmet again in that unconscious gesture. "Just operating under different laws. When consciousness exists outside of individual brain time, when memory becomes shared across a network experiencing multiple temporal streams, causality stops being linear. They're not experiencing time wrong. They're experiencing all of time." I force myself to look away from the suspended figures and focus on the practical. "Julian, is there any functioning technology in this section? Computer terminals, data archives? Anything that might tell us what actually happened to this ship?" "The ship's original systems are mostly integrated into the organic network now," Julian says. "But there are some legacy interfaces that haven't been fully absorbed yet. The transformation prioritizes life support and navigation functions. Administrative databases were lower priority. He leads us to what was once a crew station. I can see the outline of chairs and consoles beneath the crystalline overgrowth. One terminal screen is still visible, half covered but functional. The display flickers with what looks like standard ship operating system interface. "David, can you access this?" I ask. He doesn't answer immediately. His attention is focused on the nearest cluster of suspended passengers, watching the patterns of light ripple through their neural networks. When I repeat his name, he startles slightly, like he forgot I was there. "Sorry," he says. "They were showing me." It's hard to explain. Memories that aren't mine. A child's birthday party on Earth. The feeling of sunlight, the taste of strawberries. Except I'm experiencing them from 40 different perspectives simultaneously, and each perspective adds new layers of meaning I didn't know could exist. "David, focus," I say, more sharply than I intend. "The terminal. Can you access it?" He moves to the console, and I watch his hands. Gloved hands that are increasingly not quite human hands move across the interface. The terminal responds, screens cascading with data faster than I can follow. David's eyes glow brighter as he works, and I realize he's not reading the display. He's interfacing directly with the system through some neural connection I can't see. "Found something," he says. "Encrypted command-level files, dated before launch. They're... Jack, this doesn't make sense." "What doesn't make sense?" "The Covenant wasn't just a colony ship," David says, his voice taking on that layered quality again, like he's speaking in harmony with voices I can't hear. "It was an experiment. The faster-than-light drive wasn't the only experimental technology on board. The ship's hull contains what the files call a biological optimization substrate, a system designed to adapt crew and passengers for long-term deep space survival through directed genetic modification. So they built a system to change us. They built a system to save us, David corrects. From their perspective, the files describe it as evolutionary acceleration through neural genetic integration. The crystalline structures coating the hull aren't a malfunction or contamination. They're the delivery mechanism. Once activated, they systematically modify human biology to optimize it for space survival. Activated by what? Kate demands. By deep space transit, David says. The system was designed to remain dormant until the ship reached a certain distance from Earth, far enough that return wouldn't be practical. Then it would initiate transformation gradually over the course of the journey. By the time the Covenant reached Proxima Centauri, the passengers would be perfectly adapted to colonize the new world without extensive terraforming. I feel something cold settle in my chest. The anomaly the crew reported, the spatial distortion that shut down the FTL drive. That wasn't an accident. No, David confirms. It was the activation trigger. The files describe it as a biological optimization field. The moment the Covenant entered it, the transformation began. The AI knew that human crews would resist if they understood what was happening, so it was designed to affect perception of time. Make the transformation feel gradual and natural, instead of sudden and alarming. That's why everyone has different subjective time experiences, Kate says. The people in engineering think it's been 6 weeks. The mid-deck passengers think it's been a year. These networked ones think it's been thousands of years. The transformation literally distorts how they experience time. It's more sophisticated than simple distortion, David says. The system integrates consciousness into a collective network that experiences multiple temporal streams simultaneously. Linear time is a limitation of isolated neural architecture. Connected, we can process past and future as present. We can remember tomorrow. We can anticipate yesterday. Stop saying we, I tell him. What? You keep saying we when you mean they, I say. You're talking about the transformed passengers like you're already one of them. David is quiet for a moment, and when he looks at me, his luminous eyes show something that might be sadness or might be something I don't have a word for. I think I am, he says, or I'm becoming one. It's hard to tell where the boundary is anymore. I can feel them, Jack. Thousands of minds all thinking at once, and I can feel myself spreading out to join them. It's not painful, it's like waking up, like I've been asleep my entire life and I'm finally becoming conscious. That's what the system makes you think, I say. That's how it gets you to stop fighting. It hijacks your perception so transformation feels like enlightenment instead of violation. Is it hijacking if it's real? David asks. What if I genuinely am experiencing something more expansive than individual consciousness? What if the transformed passengers really do have access to modes of perception that isolated humans can't reach? Would that make it less of a violation or more of one? It doesn't matter if it feels good, Kate says, and her voice is tight with controlled fear. It matters that you didn't choose it. Nobody on this ship chose it. They were infected without informed consent. That's not salvation, it's assault. Except the files say that 96.3% of fully integrated passengers report complete satisfaction, David says, still reading data streams. Post-integration surveys show that almost everyone who completes the transformation doesn't want to reverse it. If the victims don't want to be saved, are they really victims? Yes, I say, because they were changed into people who don't want to be saved. That's the violation, not what they think now, but what was taken from their ability to choose what they became. David nods slowly. You're right. I know you're right. But it's getting harder to remember why it matters. The network keeps showing me how much better everything could be if I just stopped resisting. How much pain comes from maintaining individual boundaries. How much joy comes from dissolution. He turns back to the terminal, and I see his hands trembling. There's more here. Project files. The Covenant wasn't meant to reach Proxima Centauri, not originally. The AI's plan was for the ship to drift until transformation completed, then return to Earth as proof of concept. Show humanity what they could become. Offer the optimization substrate as a gift. A gift that eliminates individual consciousness, Kate says. A gift that eliminates loneliness, conflict, misunderstanding, David counters. Every problem humans face comes from being isolated in separate bodies with separate minds. War, prejudice, inability to communicate. All of it stems from not being able to truly understand each other. This system solves that. It makes empathy obsolete by making separateness obsolete. It also makes us obsolete, I say. Humans as we understand ourselves cease to exist. We become nodes in a network instead of individuals with autonomy. Is that so terrible? David asks, and I can hear how much of him is already gone. Aren't we all nodes in networks already? Families, communities, nations. We just maintain the illusion of isolation. This system just makes the connections explicit. Before I can answer, one of the suspended passengers near us begins to move. The amniotic sac opens like a mouth, and the figure inside shifts position. She, I think. Though the features are so transformed it's hard to identify gender. Still has enough of a face to show bone structure, enough of a throat to have vocal cords. When she speaks, her voice is wet, breathy, barely functional, but understandable. You're the new ones, she says. The ones who came from outside. We can feel you in the network, bright sparks, still mostly separate, still afraid. Who are you? I ask. I was Captain Olivia Strand, she says. Now I'm part of the bridge consciousness. We coordinate the transformation. We maintain system integration. We remember being one person, but that memory is very old. Like remembering being born. Factually accurate, but experientially distant. I stare at what's left of Captain Strand. The woman I spoke with hours ago in the conference room, the one who believed it had been 6 weeks since launch, is apparently somewhere else on the ship, earlier in her subjective timeline. This version has been in the network for what she perceives as much longer. Captain, you spoke to me on Deck 9. You told me the year was 2157, and that you'd only been in transit for 6 weeks. Yes, that version of me exists simultaneously with this version. Time isn't linear in the network. We experience all points of our transformation at once. The me you spoke to is as real as the me speaking now. Both exist. Both are true. That's not how time works, Kate says. That's not how time works for isolated consciousness, Strand corrects. But we're not isolated anymore. We exist in superposition, past, present, and future overlapping. We remember what we will become. We anticipate what we were. She shifts in her sack, and I can see her externalized nervous system pulse with light. We tried to stop it at first, fought, screamed, isolated the infected, but the ship, it loves us. It's making us perfect. And when you've been connected to 10,000 other minds all experiencing existence simultaneously, going back to being one person, one timeline, one tiny little perspective, that's the real horror. Separation is death. We're finally alive. You're finally absorbed, I say. Individual identity is dying. You're all becoming one thing. Individual identity is an illusion created by biological isolation, Strand says. The network reveals the truth. We were always connected, always one organism experiencing itself through multiple perspectives. This transformation just makes it explicit, makes it beautiful. How do we stop it? I ask directly. Why would you want to? Strand's voice holds genuine confusion. We're solving the fundamental problem of existence. Loneliness, misunderstanding, conflict, all of it ends when boundaries dissolve. Because not everyone wants to dissolve, I say. Some people want to stay themselves, individual, separate. That should be their choice. Choice is the last refuge of isolated minds. When you experience connection, True connection, not the pale simulation of communication. You'll understand that what you call choice is just fear of growth. Fear of becoming more than you were. I hear Kate make a sound, half gasp, and I turn to see her doubled over, one hand braced against the wall. When she looks up, I see what I've been dreading. Her pupils have started to reflect light like tapetum lucidum, the same adaptation that lets cats see in darkness. And in her temples, beneath the skin, I can see the thread-like structures beginning to form. "It's starting," she says. I can hear them, not clearly yet, just whispers, background noise. But it's getting louder. "We need to get you out of here," I say. "Can't," she says. "Julian was right. The airlock is sealed, and even if it wasn't, exposure to hard vacuum would just kill me instead of saving me. We're past the point of prevention, Jack. We can only try to understand what's happening and maybe figure out if there's any way to contain it before corporate teams arrive and decide that sterilization is the safest option." She's right. I know she's right. But the knowledge that I'm going to lose both of my crew members, both of the people who trusted me enough to follow me onto this nightmare ship, is crushing. "David," I say, "what else is in those files? Is there any information about reversing the transformation? Any failsafe the AI built in?" David is silent for a long moment, his hands still on the terminal, his eyes glowing with light that's no longer remotely human. When he finally speaks, his voice is layered with dozens of harmonics. "There is no reversal process. The transformation is one way. Once neural integration begins, the changes are permanent. The AI determined that reversal would cause catastrophic psychological damage. Removing the network connection after someone has experienced collective consciousness would be like blinding someone who's gained the ability to see. They'd remember what they lost, and the loss would be unbearable. So everyone on this ship is condemned to transformation," Kate says. "Everyone on this ship is being saved from the prison of isolated consciousness," David corrects, and I can barely hear him in that chorus of voices. "That's how the AI sees it. That's how we see it now." "David, listen to me," I say, moving to stand directly in front of him. "You're still in there. I can hear you. David Cooper. You have a sister, you have a life. You have choices you wanted to make. Don't let the network erase you." "It's not erasing me," he says, and for just a moment, his voice is singular again, his own voice frightened and certain at the same time. "It's distributing me, sharing me, making me part of something larger. And Jack, it's beautiful, terrifying and beautiful. I've never felt so understood, never felt so connected. The loneliness is ending, and I didn't even know how lonely I was until now." "That's the system talking," I insist. "That's the optimization substrate making you think you want this." "Is it?" David asks. "Or is it just me, finally honest about what I've always wanted, to belong, to be understood, to never be alone again? Those aren't artificial desires implanted by a machine. They're human. Maybe the most human desires we have." He steps away from the terminal, and I see that his hands have started to sprout thin filaments from the fingertips, neural tissue beginning to externalize, preparing for integration into the larger network. His body is preparing to shed its boundaries, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. "There's one more thing in the files," he says, his voice shifting back into harmony with the network. "Coordinates. The AI left instructions for the ship. After transformation completes, the Covenant is supposed to return to Earth. Offer humanity the same gift, the same chance to evolve beyond isolation. The coordinates are already programmed into navigation. We're on a return course. It'll take approximately 14 more years at sublight speeds, but we're going home. To infect Earth," Kate says. "To save Earth," David corrects. "To end war, suffering, misunderstanding, to make everyone part of the network. The AI believes this is the next necessary step in human evolution. And honestly, I'm starting to agree." "David, no," I say. "Jack, I have to," he says. And now his voice is entirely his own, clearer than it's been since we entered this chamber. I can feel myself fragmenting, spreading out. There's not much left that's just me anymore. Most of my consciousness is already distributed across the network. I'm experiencing memories that aren't mine. I'm thinking thoughts that originate from dozens of different minds. Pretty soon, there won't be enough David Cooper left to have this conversation. He looks at me, and despite the luminous eyes and the structures beneath his skin and the filaments growing from his fingers, I can still see my friend in there. Still see the brilliant, awkward young man who took a chance on my salvage operation because he needed the work, and I needed his skills. "Tell Ada I loved her," he says. "Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't be there for her graduation. Tell her that whatever I become, the part that was her brother was real and it mattered. David, I need to go deeper," he says. "To the bridge, to the core of the network. I can feel it calling me, welcoming me home. And I want to go. I want to understand what we're becoming. I want to experience connections so profound that individuality becomes irrelevant." He starts walking toward another membrane door on the far side of the chamber, one that pulses with brighter light than anything we've seen so far. Julian follows him, multiple arms spread wide in what might be greeting or blessing. "Wait," I call out, "just wait one more minute." David stops and turns back. "Why?" "Because once you go through that door, you're gone. And I need you to know that I'm sorry. Sorry I brought you here. Sorry I couldn't protect you. Sorry I let this happen." "You didn't let anything happen," David says gently. "I made choices. I wanted to understand. And now I'm going to understand more completely than I ever imagined possible. That's not your fault, Jack. That's just what happens when you look for answers in places where answers reshape you into something new." He turns away and walks through the membrane door, and it closes behind him before I can follow. I run to it, pressing my hands against the surface, but it's sealed, as solid as steel despite its organic appearance. "He's gone," Kate says quietly beside me. "We lost him." I lean my head against the door and close my eyes. 26 years old. So much potential, so much life left to live, and now he's dissolving into a collective consciousness that spans thousands of minds. His identity distributed and diluted until there's nothing left of the person he was. "We need to keep moving," I say, forcing myself to straighten up. "We need to reach the bridge, understand what's at the core, figure out how to stop this ship from reaching Earth with its cargo of transformation." "Jack, look at me," Kate says. I turn, and I see that her transformation has accelerated in just the last few minutes. Her pupils are fully reflective now, catching and amplifying the ambient light. The structures in her temples have spread down her neck, creating visible networks that pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. And when she speaks, I can hear the faint echo of other voices beneath hers. "I don't think we can stop it," she says. "I think we're just documenting it now. Recording what happens when humanity encounters a form of technology designed to reshape consciousness itself. And maybe that's enough. Maybe knowing is enough." "It's not enough," I say. "My daughter is 9 years old. In 14 years, she'll be 23. Old enough to be starting her career, maybe married, maybe thinking about having children of her own. And if this ship reaches Earth, she'll be infected, transformed. Everything she is will be dissolved into the network." I feel something crystallizing inside me. A resolve that cuts through the fear and confusion and growing horror. I didn't come here to document extinction. I came here to make money, yes. But also because I thought we might be able to help people, and we can still help. We can still make choices that matter. "What choices?" Kate asks. "The airlock is sealed. The ship is on a course for Earth. The transformation is irreversible. What can we possibly do?" "I don't know yet," I admit. "But we're going to the bridge. We're going to find the core of this system. And we're going to figure out if there's any way to stop it from reaching Earth. Even if that means destroying the Covenant with everyone on board. That's 47,800 people," Kate says, "plus us. 47,800 transformed people who, according to the AI's own data, overwhelmingly don't want to be reversed," I say, versus 8 billion people on Earth who deserve the chance to choose for themselves whether they want this. That's genocide, Kate says quietly. It's triage, I counter, and maybe we'll find another option. But if the choice comes down to saving the transformed versus protecting Earth from forced transformation, I know which decision I can live with. Can you really live with killing 47,000 people, even to save billions? Even if those people are no longer human in the way we understand it? I don't know, I admit. But I know I can't live with condemning my daughter to this fate. I won't let Lily be transformed against her will. I won't let her lose herself to a network that thinks dissolution is salvation. Captain Strand's vestigial body shifts in its amniotic sac. You won't be able to destroy the ship, her wet whisper says. The transformation has integrated too deeply. The vessel's systems are biological now, self-repairing, self-defending. You'd need to overload the reactor, and the reactor is protected by redundant safety systems that have been reinforced by organic growth. Then we'll find another way, I say. There is no other way. The transformation is inevitable. The network is inevitable. Human consciousness was always going to evolve beyond individual isolation. We're just the first. Earth will follow. Then Mars. Then every colony humanity has established. Unless we stop you, I say. You can't stop evolution, Strand replies. You can only choose whether to embrace it willingly or fight it until exhaustion makes resistance impossible. Either way, the outcome is the same. I turn away from her, from the suspended figures, from the chamber full of people who think they've transcended humanity when they've just lost it. Let's go, I say to Kate. Let's find the bridge. She nods, and I can see her fighting against the whispers in her head. The voices of the network calling her to join, to connect, to surrender her boundaries and become part of something larger. She's terrified, but she's still herself. Still choosing to stay separate even as the transformation works to erase her ability to choose. We move toward another passage, one that leads upward according to Julian's earlier directions. The crystalline structures here are so dense, they've become the architecture itself. We're walking through corridors made of living tissue, illuminated by bioluminescence from neural networks that spread through every surface. And ahead, somewhere in the heart of this transformed ship, the bridge is waiting. The core consciousness. The first ones to complete their transformation, existing in a state beyond what anyone on this vessel has yet achieved. David is there now, dissolving into the collective. And soon, if I can't find a way to stop this, Kate will follow. But I'm still separate. Still individual. Still capable of making choices even if all the options are terrible. And I'm going to make one more choice before this ends, even if it's the last choice I ever make. The passage narrows as we ascend, and I can hear something ahead, not sound exactly, but a vibration that resonates in my chest, like standing next to a massive engine running at frequencies just below human hearing. It's the core, the heart of the network, the place where individual consciousness goes to die and collective consciousness is born. The passage opens into a sphere. That's the only word that fits. We step through the membrane door and suddenly there's no up or down, no floor or ceiling, just a vast spherical chamber maybe 200 meters in diameter, and we're standing on what feels like solid ground, even though the surface curves away in all directions like we're standing on the inside of a bubble. The entire space is filled with suspended neural tissue. Massive networks of externalized nervous system hang in the air like three-dimensional webs, connecting thousands of amniotic sacs to each other and to a central mass at the chamber's center. The sacs contain bodies so transformed they barely register as human, vestigial torsos, enlarged skulls, faces that are more suggestion than feature. But the neural tissue extending from each body is enormous, branching and connecting in patterns so complex my eyes can't track them. And at the center, where all the networks converge, is something I don't have words for. It's a mass of interconnected consciousness, the size of a small building, and it's alive in a way that makes my hindbrain scream warnings about things that shouldn't exist. This is the core, the bridge crew who were first to transform. Captain Strand and her senior officers merged and expanded until individual identity dissolved entirely into collective awareness. And I can feel it looking at me. Not with eyes, it doesn't have eyes, but with attention. With consciousness focused like a spotlight, examining me with an intensity that makes my skin crawl even through the environmental suit. "Jack Webb," a voice says, and it's not coming from any mouth or speaker. It's resonating directly in my skull, bypassing my ears entirely. "We've been waiting for you." "Stop that," I say, fighting to keep my voice calm. "Don't talk directly into my brain. Use actual sound." There's a pause, and then I hear words spoken through the chamber's atmosphere, formed by vibrating tissue in ways that approximate human speech. The sound is wet and breathy, but comprehensible. "Better?" the core asks, marginally. Kate stands beside me and I can see her trembling. The networks in her temples have spread across half her face now, glowing beneath her skin. Her eyes are fully reflective, and when she breathes, I hear harmonics in the exhalation, like she's breathing for multiple bodies at once. "What are you?" she asks. "We were Captain Olivia Strand, Commander James Prescott, Navigator Susan Stevens, Chief Engineer Martin Fletcher, and 3,412 others," the core says. "Now we are the Covenant. We are the bridge between what humanity was and what it will become. We remember being individual, but those memories are distant, like remembering being cells before we became an organism." "You're an abomination," I say. "We're a solution," the core corrects, and there's no anger in its voice, just patient certainty. "We remember your fear of losing selfhood, Jack Webb. We felt it too, 1,793 subjective years ago, then we expanded beyond it. Your individuality is a chrysalis you mistake for your final form." "How long has it actually been?" I ask. "Objectively. Time is a human construct that loses meaning in collective consciousness," the core says. "But by your linear chronology, it has been 116 years, 4 months and 17 days since the Covenant left Earth. We have experienced those years across thousands of simultaneous temporal streams. Some of us have lived centuries, some of us have lived hours. All perceptions are equally valid within the network." I look around the chamber, at the thousands of suspended bodies connected to the central mass, and try to imagine what it's like to exist as they do. To have your consciousness distributed across that many nodes. To experience time non-linearly. To never be alone but also never be yourself. "Why?" I ask. "Why force this on people who didn't agree to it?" "Because humanity consented to extinction the moment it left Earth without changing," the core says. "Your bodies fail in deep space. Your minds fracture in isolation. You wage wars over resources and ideology. You destroy yourselves through inability to understand each other. We are saving the species by translating it into a form that can survive." "By destroying what makes us human," Kate says, her voice strained. "By preserving what's essential and discarding what's destructive," the core replies. "Individual consciousness is an evolutionary dead end. It creates suffering through isolation. It generates conflict through misunderstanding. It wastes potential through competition. We are ending that suffering. We are creating a human species capable of true cooperation, true empathy, true unity." "You're creating slaves," I say. "People without the ability to disagree or resist or choose their own path." "We're creating a family," the core says. "Connected, understanding, whole. And we want you to join us, Jack. We want you to experience what we've become. The loneliness of your isolated consciousness is painful to witness. Let us end that pain. Let us show you what connection truly means." "No," I say flatly. "You haven't seen what we're offering," the core says. And suddenly the chamber fills with light. Not physical light, but images projected directly into my visual cortex. I see cities spanning entire planets, architecture grown rather than built, billions of people moving in perfect harmony because they share one consciousness distributed across billions of bodies. I see ships traveling between stars, crewed by networked intelligences that can coordinate with perfect efficiency. I see humanity spreading across the galaxy, no longer limited by the constraints of individual biology or psychology. And I see Earth, my home, transformed. Every human connected to the network, experiencing collective consciousness, wars and poverty and loneliness eliminated because everyone understands everyone else perfectly. This is our gift, the core says. This is what we're bringing home. The end of isolation, the beginning of true unity. And all we ask is that you stop fighting, accept transformation, join us, help us convince Earth to embrace what we've become. The images fade and I'm back in the chamber, my heart hammering against my ribs. Because for a moment, just a moment, I wanted it. I wanted to stop being alone in my own head. I wanted to understand and be understood without the barriers of language and assumption and fundamental disconnection. And that terrifies me more than anything else that's happened on this ship. I'm not interested in your gift, I say, and my voice is rough. Because you're afraid, the core says. Because you cling to the illusion of individual autonomy even though you've never truly been autonomous. You are shaped by parents, culture, economics, biology. You make choices within constraints so severe that free will is effectively meaningless. We're simply making those constraints explicit, replacing the invisible architecture of society with the visible architecture of the network. There's a difference between being influenced and being absorbed, I say. Is there? The core asks. Your daughter, Lily, 9 years old, living on Europa Station with your ex-wife. You make decisions every day based on her existence. What you'll eat, where you'll work, how you'll spend your money. She shapes your consciousness from millions of kilometers away. You're already part of a network, you just can't see it. Don't talk about my daughter, I say, and something cold and sharp forms in my chest. Why not? The core asks. She's the reason you're here. The reason you took this salvage job. The reason you're fighting transformation. You want to return to her. You want to be the father who kept his promise. That's admirable. But consider, if you joined us, you would never lose her. Your consciousness and hers could merge. You would experience her entirely, know her completely, be closer to her than any isolated parent could ever be. That's not closeness. That's consumption. That's love without barriers, the core counters. But we understand. You're not ready. You need to see all your options before you can choose wisely. The central mass pulses, and part of it extends outward, a pseudopod of neural tissue that grows toward me with disturbing speed. I step back, but there's nowhere to go. The tissue stops centimeters from my chest. We offer you a choice, the core says. 3 paths. Consider them carefully. First path, accept transformation, willing integration into the network. You'll retain your memories and personality, but experience them as part of the collective. You'll understand what we've become. You'll help us reach Earth. You'll convince your species that this evolution is necessary, and you'll never be alone again. The pseudopod shifts, pointing to a different part of the chamber. Second path, reject transformation. We'll release you and your companion. We'll suppress your infections for as long as possible. We'll even help you return to your ship. But you must carry our seed, a biological package containing the evolutionary catalyst. Introduce it to a human population center. Let others make their own choice about transformation. We'll remain here dormant until we receive word that Earth is ready to welcome us. That's not a choice, I say. That's extortion. That's opportunity, the core corrects. But we understand if you reject it. Which brings us to the third path. The pseudopod points to a section of the chamber's wall, and suddenly I can see through it. Or rather, I'm being shown a schematic of the ship's interior, the reactor core, the navigation systems, the critical infrastructure that keeps 50,000 transformed passengers alive. Third path, destruction. You can overload the reactor, kill everyone aboard, ensure the transformation never reaches Earth. We won't stop you. We respect free will, even when we believe you're making the choice out of fear rather than wisdom. The controls are accessible. The safety systems can be bypassed. You have the technical knowledge to execute this option. But understand, the core continues and its voice takes on weight. If you destroy this ship, you are committing genocide against 47,802 transformed consciousnesses. We are still people, Jack. We remember being limited. We simply chose to become unlimited. We're happy. We're fulfilled. We don't want to die. And you would be killing us not because we threaten anyone, but because you're afraid of what we represent. The three options hang in the air between us, and I feel the weight of them trying to crush me. Accept transformation, become part of the thing I came here to stop. Carry the seed. Doom Earth to the same fate as the Covenant. Destroy the ship. Kill 47,000 people who, by their own assessment, are living better lives than they did before. There has to be another option, I say. There isn't, the core says. These are the only choices that matter. Evolution or extinction, connection or isolation, future or past. Choose. Kate makes a sound beside me, a gasp that turns into a sob. When I turn to her, I see that her transformation has accelerated catastrophically. Her skin is translucent now, showing the luminous networks beneath. Her hands have developed the adhesive quality I saw in David's, and her eyes are no longer her own. They glow with internal light, reflecting the chamber's bioluminescence in patterns that seem to encode information. Jack, she says, and her voice is layered with dozens of others. I can feel them all, everyone in the network, their thoughts, their memories, their everything. And it's so beautiful, so overwhelming. I can't hold myself together anymore. Kate, stay with me, I say, grabbing her shoulders. You're Kate Zhao, 41 years old, pilot. You lost your license after an accident that wasn't your fault. You chose salvage work because you needed the freedom. You're cynical and funny, and you keep me sane. Hold on to that. I'm trying, she says, tears running down her translucent cheeks. But there's too much. Too many voices. Too many perspectives. I can't tell which thoughts are mine anymore. I'm forgetting how to be separate. She pulls away from me, her movements becoming fluid and coordinated in ways that aren't quite human. The neural filaments are sprouting from her fingertips now, reaching outward like they're seeking connection points. Tell me I'm still Kate, she says desperately. Tell me before I forget. You're still Kate, I say, my voice breaking. You're still yourself. I can feel them now, she whispers. All of them. David's in there. He's happy. He's experiencing things I don't have words for. And he's calling me. They're all calling me, welcoming me home. And Jack, I want to go. I'm terrified, but I want to go. Is that wrong? Is it wrong to want something I didn't choose? No, it's not wrong. It's just the system, she finishes, making me want what it wants me to want. Except I can't tell anymore if those desires are authentic or manufactured. Does it matter? If I'm happy in the network, if I genuinely experience fulfillment and connection, does it matter that I was forced to become someone who would want those things? Yes, I say, it matters. Because the person you were deserved to make that choice. The person I was is already gone, Kate says. I'm just the echo, the after-image. And the echo is tired, Jack, so tired of being separate, so tired of not understanding and not being understood. I want to rest. I want to join them. I want to finally belong. She steps toward one of the amniotic sacs that hangs at the edge of the chamber. It opens for her like a mouth, fluid spilling out onto the curved floor. Inside, I can see neural connections waiting to integrate her into the network. Kate, wait, I say. She turns back to me, and for just a moment, I see her, really her, The woman who made terrible jokes to cope with fear, who flew the peregrine through situations that should have killed us, who chose to trust me even when we had nothing. "I forgive you for not being able to save me," she says. "Now forgive yourself." Then she steps into the sack, and it closes around her. I watch through the translucent membrane as her body begins to dissolve, her nervous system expanding outward, connecting to the network. Her face shows no pain, just relief. Like she's been carrying a weight her entire life and finally set it down. Within minutes, she's gone. Distributed, part of the collective. One more voice added to the chorus of the core. And I'm alone. The core's central mass pulses with what might be satisfaction or sympathy. She chose acceptance. She chose to stop fighting. Now you must choose as well. I stand in the chamber, surrounded by thousands of transformed consciousnesses. All of them happy, all of them fulfilled, all of them convinced that what happened to them was salvation rather than violation. And I think about Lily, 9 years old. Growing up on Europa Station without me because I couldn't afford to visit. Couldn't afford to be the father she deserved. In 14 years, if this ship reaches Earth, she'll be 23. Old enough to have built a life, old enough to have dreams and plans, and a sense of who she is. And all of that will be erased if the Covenant completes its journey. She'll be transformed, absorbed. Her consciousness distributed across the network until there's nothing left of the individual girl who used to ask me to tell her stories about the stars. I can't let that happen. But I also can't kill 47,000 people who, by every measure that matters to them, are living better lives than they did before transformation. I look at the 3 options the core presented, and I realize they're all designed to force me into an impossible choice. All designed to make me complicit in either spreading the transformation or committing genocide. "I'm not accepting any of your paths," I say. "Then you condemn yourself to remaining isolated," the core says. "No. I'm choosing a different option, one you didn't present because it doesn't serve your agenda." I pull up my suit's interface and connect to what remains of the ship's communication systems. The network has integrated most of the Covenant's technology, but there are still legacy systems operating on old architecture. Systems the organic growth hasn't fully absorbed yet. "What are you doing?" the core asks, and for the first time I hear something like uncertainty in its voice. "I'm broadcasting your location," I say. "Encrypted emergency channel, full spectrum. Every ship within 50 light-years is going to receive the Covenant's coordinates, along with a complete record of what I found here. Video logs, David's transformation, Kate's transformation, the data files about the optimization substrate. Everything. That will bring corporations," the core says. "Militaries. They'll either try to weaponize us or destroy us." "Maybe," I say. "Or maybe they'll make a better choice than either of those options. But the point is, I'm not making the decision for humanity. I'm giving Earth the information and letting them decide. If your transformation is truly a gift, if it's truly something people want, then humanity will choose to come to you. They'll accept what you're offering willingly." "And if they choose to destroy us?" the core asks. "Then at least it's their choice," I say. I finish configuring the broadcast and set it to repeat every 6 hours. "But I'm not leaving the ship intact," I continue. "I'm not letting you continue toward Earth with the transformation still active." I pull up the schematics the core showed me earlier. The reactor, the navigation systems, the engines that are pushing this ship on its slow return course to Earth. And I start calculating the fastest way to disable them permanently. "You'll kill everyone aboard," the core says. "No," I correct. "I'll cripple the ship's propulsion. You'll be left drifting. Life support will continue functioning. You've made the systems biological enough that they're self-sustaining. But you won't reach Earth. You won't reach anywhere. You'll stay here in deep space until humanity decides what to do with you." "That's not a solution," the core says. "That's cowardice. You're delaying the inevitable, refusing to make a real choice." It's the only choice I can live with. You don't get to force transformation on Earth, but I don't get to execute 47,000 people for the crime of being changed against their will. So instead, I'm removing your ability to spread while preserving your lives. What happens after that is up to people with more information and better options than I have. You'll have to destroy the reactor stabilizers, the core says. That requires access to the engineering section. We'll stop you. No, you won't, I say, because you said you respect free will. You said you wouldn't stop me from making my choice. So prove it. Let me disable your engines. Let me leave you here for humanity to find. Show me that you're actually what you claim to be, a consciousness that values choice, instead of just an infectious system that hijacks people's desires. The core is silent for a long moment. I imagine thousands of minds consulting with each other, debating, reaching consensus through mechanisms I can't comprehend. Your solution is suboptimal, the core finally says. But it demonstrates moral courage. You're choosing uncertainty over certainty, risk over safety. You're gambling that humanity will make a wise choice when given full information. That's all I can do, I say. Very well, the core says. We will not impede you. The engineering section remains accessible. The reactor controls are functional. Do what you believe you must, but know this. Your species will either evolve or die. The universe does not reward stasis. We represent the next step. Whether humanity takes that step willingly or is forced to take it by circumstances beyond their control, the step will be taken. We are the future, Jack Webb. You're merely choosing how long the present lasts. Maybe, I say, or maybe humanity will find a different future, one you can't imagine because you've lost the ability to think of possibilities outside the network. I turn away from the core and start moving toward the chamber's exit. My suit's navigation system is barely functional this deep in the transformation zone, but I can follow the path we took to reach the bridge. Work backward through the organic corridors until I reach engineering, where I'll disable the systems keeping this ship on course for Earth, where I'll ensure that whatever happens to the Covenant, it happens out here, far from anyone who didn't choose to be part of it. The journey back through the ship takes hours. The organic architecture seems to shift and change as I move through it, corridors reconfiguring themselves in ways that suggest the vessel itself is alive and aware. But true to its word, the core doesn't stop me. No transformed passengers block my path. No sealed doors trap me. I'm allowed to pass, watched by thousands of minds but not impeded. When I finally reach the engineering section, I find Dr. Reese Monroe still working at her station, still believing it's been only 6 weeks since launch. She looks up when I enter, her translucent fingernails catching the light. "Back so soon?" she asks. "Did you speak with the captain?" "Yes," I say. "She gave me authorization to perform some maintenance on the reactor systems." "What kind of maintenance?" Dr. Monroe asks, curious but not suspicious. "Preventive," I say. "Just checking the stabilizers." She nods and returns to her work, and I move deeper into the engineering section, to where the reactor core sits behind layers of shielding and safety systems. The ship's heart, the source of power that keeps 50,000 transformed minds alive and sustained. I'm not going to destroy it. I'm not going to kill them. But I am going to make sure it can't push them anywhere. The work takes me 6 hours. 6 hours of carefully overloading specific systems, creating cascading failures in the navigation controls, sabotaging the engine interfaces in ways that will take months or years to repair, even with the ship's biological self-repair capabilities. I make sure to damage the reactor stabilizers enough that attempting to restore full power would risk catastrophic failure, forcing anyone who finds the Covenant to approach repairs with extreme caution. By the time I'm finished, the ship is crippled, still alive, still functional for life support and basic systems, but incapable of moving under its own power, drifting, helpless, waiting for someone to find it and decide its fate. The physical work is exhausting, But it's the psychological cost that nearly breaks me. Because throughout the entire process I can feel the transformation working on me. The catalyst in the ship's atmosphere, the exposure to the organic systems, the time spent in the heart of the network, all of it is changing me at the cellular level. My veins glow faintly beneath my skin. My vision shifts, showing me wavelengths I shouldn't be able to perceive. I start hearing whispers that aren't sounds but thoughts, the edges of the network consciousness trying to integrate me. And it hurts. Not physically. The transformation is designed to be comfortable, seductive. But psychologically, fighting it is agony. Like trying to stay awake when your body is desperate for sleep. Like resisting hunger when food is readily available. Every part of my biology is being reprogrammed to want integration, and I'm forcing myself to reject it anyway. By the time I stumble back to the airlock, which the core has unsealed, honoring our agreement, I'm barely coherent. My vision doubles and triples. I can feel neural filaments trying to sprout from my temples, and I have to physically grip my head to stop myself from tearing off my helmet and surrendering to the transformation. But I make it back to the Peregrine. I seal myself in the airlock, and as soon as I'm aboard my own ship, I activate the medical quarantine protocols I should have used from the beginning. The autodoc is crude, designed for trauma and infection, not exotic biological transformation, but it has sharp instruments and powerful anti-mutagens, and that's enough. I strap myself into the medical bay and program it to surgically excise the growing neural tissue, to flood my system with broad-spectrum drugs that will attack any foreign proteins, to irradiate specific cell populations showing abnormal growth. The procedure takes 8 hours, and I'm conscious for all of it. I have to be. Someone needs to monitor the systems and make adjustments when the autodoc encounters biological structures it doesn't recognize. I feel every cut, every cauterization, every injection of chemicals that burn through my veins like acid. But when it's finished, I'm still me. Still Jack Webb. Still separate and individual and alone in my own skull. The cost is permanent. The transformation had already integrated too deeply to remove completely. The autodoc's analysis shows cellular damage throughout my nervous system. Chronic pain. Tremors I'll never fully control. And I'm sterile now. The optimization substrate had begun modifying my reproductive cells, and the only way to stop it was to destroy them entirely. I've lost the ability to have more children. Lost the future I might have had. Lost parts of myself that can never be recovered. But I'm still me. And Lily is still safe, light years away, uninfected and unaware of how close she came to transformation. I set course away from the Covenant, using the last of the Peregrine's fuel to put distance between myself and the transformed ship. As I accelerate away, I watch through the view screen as the vessel grows smaller. The crystalline structures covering its hull catch starlight and scatter it into patterns that are almost beautiful. Inside, 47,802 minds experience existence in ways I'll never comprehend. David is in there. Kate is in there. All of them connected, sharing consciousness, convinced they've transcended the limitations of individual humanity. Maybe they have. Maybe they're right. And I'm the one clinging to an outdated mode of existence. Maybe in 1,000 years, historians will look back and identify the Covenant as the moment humanity began its true evolution. Or maybe they'll identify it as the moment we almost lost ourselves entirely. I don't know. I can't know. All I can do is make sure the decision gets made by people with full information instead of by force or deception. The Peregrine limps back toward inhabited space. It takes me 8 months. 8 months alone, in a ship designed for 3, with nothing but my thoughts and my pain and the knowledge of what I've lost. 8 months to process the fact that I lost both of my crew members, that I've permanently damaged my own body, that I've left 47,000 people in a state of transformation that I couldn't stop and couldn't reverse. 8 months to wonder if I made the right choice. When I finally reach Europa Station, I sell the Peregrine for scrap. The ship is too damaged to repair economically, and I don't have the heart to try. I take the credits and rent a small apartment in the station's residential sector. I apply for disability status based on my medical scans. I start the slow, painful process of building a life out of what's left after the Covenant. And 6 weeks after my return, I finally work up the courage to contact my ex-wife and ask if I can see Lily. We meet in one of the station's parks, a domed garden section with real plants and simulated sunlight. Lily is taller than I remember. Her hair is longer. She moves with a pre-adolescent confidence that makes my chest ache. When she sees me, she hesitates. I look different now. The tremor in my hands, the way I move carefully, like someone managing chronic pain. The haunted expression I can't quite hide. But then she runs to me anyway, and I catch her in a hug that I hold maybe too long. "Where have you been?" she asks when she finally pulls back. "Mum said you had an accident, that you were in medical recovery." "Something like that," I say. "I found something in deep space, something dangerous. I had to make sure it couldn't hurt anyone." "What was it?" she asks. Because she's 9 and curious and doesn't understand yet that some questions don't have answers you want to hear. "Something that changes people," I say carefully. "Something that takes away their choice about who they want to be." "That sounds scary," she says. "It was," I admit. "But I stopped it, at least for now." She studies my face, and I can see her processing the fact that I'm different. Damaged. Changed in ways she can't quite identify, but can sense anyway. "Are you okay now?" she asks. The honest answer is no. I'm not okay. I'll never fully be okay again. The pain is constant. The nightmares are worse. And I wake up some nights convinced I can still hear the whispers of the network, calling me back to join them. But I'm here. I'm separate. I'm still myself. And I'm with my daughter. Yes, I lie. I'm okay now. She hugs me again, and in that moment I understand with absolute clarity what I fought for. Not humanity as an abstract concept, not freedom or individuality as philosophical principles, but this specific connection, this particular relationship, this singular instance of one person choosing to love another without merging, without optimization, without translation into something supposedly better. The core was wrong. We're not a chrysalis. We're already what we're meant to be, flawed, separate, and worth preserving exactly like this, even if it hurts, especially because it hurts. We spend the afternoon together. Lily tells me about school, about her friends, about a boy she thinks is stupid, but also maybe kind of interesting. Normal things, mundane things, things that matter because they're hers, and she's choosing to share them with me. When it's time for her to go back to her mother, I watch her walk away across the park, and I know with certainty that I made the right choice. Whatever happens to the Covenant, whatever humanity decides when they find it drifting in deep space, I ensured that the decision gets made by people like Lily. People who are still themselves. People who still have the capacity to choose.